Okay, so today I want to talk about the 7 fears that hold engineers back. Not just engineers, electricians, technicians, people from our industry with a technical background. And before I get into this, I want to just share a story that sticks with me from my life, where I overcame a huge fear that I wanted to run away from, that I was so close to running away from because the fear and anxiety was just so much, but I didn't. I managed to overcome it in the moment, or not even overcome it, but just bear it and stay and not run away. And it's something that's just never left me. But from doing that has given me confidence, because it's something that I remember to this day. It's something that I actually did. No one can take that away from me, which I think is a big part of getting over fears and helping us make decisions that, although scary and you don't necessarily know the outcome, are actually good for us. So I want to run through that now before I get into the 7 fears that hold engineers back. So I used to work at Loxon, who are a manufacturer of smart home BMS automation control, and they also have like a software as well. And I worked there for about a year and a half as a partner coach, helping electricians, engineers, technicians use Loxon to increase their business's revenue and get more involved with doing like controls, automation, smart home work. So supporting them really on the technical side, also like on the business side as well. And 6 months in, and I kind of knew this from the start, but I knew at some point that I would have to provide training to electricians, engineers, technicians on like how to use Loxon. So like the programming software, also, teach them some business principles and whatnot. And it was a 4 or 5 day intensive across a week, so Monday to Friday. And this happened once a month. And I knew when I started that this was something that I had to do. So I had to become competent enough using Loxon, competent enough understanding the industry, of which I hadn't really, specifically like electricians. I wasn't an electrician, so I hadn't come from that industry. To give them the confidence that I knew what I was talking about, and I could advise them and I could coach them. So this came around roughly 6 months into me starting there, and I still didn't really feel like I had enough competence on just the Loxon side of things, let alone like the industry in terms of electrical industry. And anyway, this came around, and as you can imagine, if you've never presented in front of people before, I think they would range between like 10 and 16 people. So 16 people, all the focus on you, and you are supposedly the person with all the answers, having only been working there for 6 months in a very technical industry. So as you can imagine, the week building up to this, lots of cramming in terms of understanding the software and preparing, and going through these PowerPoints and making notes on each PowerPoint, thinking, I'll be all right. I'll be able to just pan along these slides and then read the notes and texts in the slides. Which, by the way, just in the reality of it, it just doesn't work. You need to look at the slides and you need to talk about the slides. You can't be reading the notes in the slides. It just doesn't work that way. So weeks preparing like that, and then, that kind of went down the pan. Anyways, you can imagine preparing for this, getting more anxious and more anxious. And then the Sunday night before the Monday that this was starting. Yeah, just huge levels of anxiety, didn't sleep very well, thinking of all the excuses that I could come up with to not go into work and not do it. And this is the thing, by the way, let me just take a step back. I wanted to do this. I deep down, now this was part of the job description, so I did kind of have to accept it to stay in that role, but I did actually want to do this because I knew at that stage that at some point in the future, I wanted to go into business. I knew that, you know, the landscape of doing business now is very much digital, and you had to get used to, or you would, to be successful or to have some success, or at least be comfortable in this industry, to get some level of success, you just have to accept the fact that you need to get comfortable speaking in front of people. And I knew that I wanted to go into business and do something online, so this was kind of like me practicing and getting ready and getting myself out of my comfort zone for what I wanted to do in the future. And I wasn't 100% sure exactly what I wanted to do in the future, but I knew going through this process and getting out of my comfort zone to do this was good training, good practice, and over time would pay me back. And yeah, so like kind of like it does kind of a full circle. And this is, you know, fast forwarding how many years, 4 years or so, 5 years, like I've done this enough times now that I feel not 100% comfortable, but pretty comfortable having this conversation, just making sure we're actually recording, having this conversation, talking to you, although I'm not actually talking to you, I'm talking to a camera, but this whole thing, it kind of stemmed from there. So I wanted to do this, but I was, as people do, which is completely normal, we're coming up with ways to get out of it. And I've done a lot of, I guess, work on myself for various reasons, not just like wanting to progress business-wise, but also to overcome various things, like anxiety. Like, I won't get into all of that at the moment, but like I've done a lot of like self-reflection. I've done a lot of study in terms of like psychology and what goes on. And what you realize is there's actually two of you. And there's a really good book that I've just recently reread called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle that explains this so well. And every time I read it, it just gives me so much peace and reminds me that who I am in my head, that person chattering away in my head, isn't actually me. Because if you think about it, this is a really good exercise to prove the fact that there's actually two of us. So if you just sit there quietly and just wait for the next thought to come along, and you need to be like hyper aware of this. And so just sit there and just wait for the next thought to come along, and then you will notice that thought if you're aware enough and present enough, and you will notice that thought. And it might take you a while before you notice that you've had this thought and you've gone down the rabbit hole. You might have to pull yourself back, but there's that awareness. So there's that part of you, the thought process you, the ego you, that has all these thoughts. And this is a really powerful tool to have, but 90% of the time it doesn't really serve us. It just causes a lot of worry, stress, anxiety about things that haven't happened, or things that happened in the past that we can't do anything about. But then there's the awareness that just caught that thought and saw that thought. So that's what I mean by there's two of us. And the real you is that awareness that just watches. The self, the ego, is that chattering that is just the human condition. And the more you become aware of this chattering, the easier it becomes to not listen to it, disregard it. That isn't me. That isn't who you are. And it makes it easier breaking through fears and making decisions that are uncomfortable at the time. So getting back to the story. So I was trying to come up with all the excuses in the world to get out of doing this before I even, before the Monday came. This was the Sunday before. And then just huge amounts of anxiety all the way to work, just thinking, how am I going to do this? What's going to happen? What if this? What if that? Those common thoughts that lead down a negative spiral that aren't helpful. All this physiological symptoms of stress happening. A specific one that I used to get quite a lot is like a really weird one, but like it felt like I had things crawling on my skull, on my head, like almost small insects. Obviously, sweating and heart racing, quite common ones. Anyway, I'll fast forward a little bit. So anyway, I just endured that, and I started doing the training, and for the first 2 hours, kind of suffered through it, but continued. And I knew that one of the marketing guys, there's kind of like a handover for like half an hour. One of the marketing guys comes in, takes over, talks about like common marketing practices, and I knew that I would like get a break then. So that happened around sort of, I don't know, 11 o'clock, half 11 in the morning for half an hour. And so he took over. I went downstairs, and I was just like shaking, like just thinking, how can I get out of this? How can I get out of this? Thinking of all these ways, excuses where I could just get in my car and drive and disappear with like, and then what excuse can I give later on as to why I just left without giving anyone any notice? So going down these thought processes, negative thought processes, because I was in fear, I was scared, I huge amounts of anxiety, and I just wanted to get out of there. And I knew through doing some sort of like introspective work to help me get over like anxiety previously to this, I knew that if I ran away in that moment and I didn't go back upstairs after the marketing presentation had been done, that I would remember this, that I gave in, and that would not help with my confidence moving forward. I knew if I can just get through today, go up there and endure it for the rest of the day, I then knew that tomorrow I would have that banked and no one would be able to take that away from me. So as much as I wanted to run away, like, trust me, this is why I remember this story, because it affected me so much, but I didn't allow that thought process to stop me. So I went back upstairs, I endured the rest of the day, and actually as the day progressed, it got easier. It got easier. I just settled into it. Like, I'm not going to pretend that the anxiety and fear wasn't there. It was still there, but I got through it, and I got home and I did it. And then the next day, like, there was still anxiety and fear there, but I knew that I'd got through the first day, so why can I not get through the second day? And that's kind of the end of that story, but that is kind of a tactic that I've used ever since. That if I want to do something, it's going to get uncomfortable. There's going to be fear there. But if it's something that I truly want, then I've got to endure it and I've got to get through it. And I know if I just get through the first instance of that, I can start developing confidence. And in this program that I followed when I was suffering from anxiety really badly, it was by a Kiwi, a guy in New Zealand called Freedom from Fear. And he talked about a right inner voice, developing a right inner voice in your head. You know, so it's still that ego, that chattering, but it's like a positive chattering. Like, well, Chris, you can do this. You did it yesterday, so you can do it again today. And so that's just something that I've developed through doing things that I didn't want to do. So why am I talking about this now? What's brought this up? And it's because Friday, I had a conversation with a guy who wanted to join our program. He's not really from a typical background of the person that we help. So he's not an electrician. He's not an engineer. Well, he is. He's a software engineer, but you know, he's not a maintenance or service engineer, and he's not a technician. And he wants to shift his career into getting into controls, BMS, automation, for various reasons I won't get into. It's not relevant to this story. But we had a really good conversation, really good guy, but you could clearly see that he didn't want to make the wrong decision, and there was lots of uncertainty coming up, because not only is he faced with the decision of investing in a program, you know, with a guy off the internet, me, which has a lot of like uncertainty and fears, which we're going to get into associated with, he's also shifting careers. You know, so is he actually going to be able to do this? Is he going to be able to go from being a software engineer to a BMS controls engineer? I believe that he can. And I said to him that if we don't help you do this, we will just give you your money back. or we continue working with you until you do. But of course, he's got to take my word for it and trust what I'm, that I will follow through with that. So anyway, what happened was he didn't fully commit, but he made a down payment, and we then agreed to catch up today, of which I assumed, because I'd not heard anything, that he was just, he'd got over the fear, the anxiety, and decided that this is the right thing to do. Anyway, we jumped on a call for the onboarding to process the rest of the investment, and that fear cropped up again. And like in the meantime, he had looked at other alternatives that, not disregarding them, and I'm not going to mention them, but there are obviously alternatives, but they are not a results-based business that focus on actually getting him the outcome that he wanted and came to us in the first place, getting him from where he's at the moment to where he wants to get to in the controls BMS industry. It's just a 2 or 3 day in-person thing, just doing some stuff. Right. So, and much less of an investment as well. Like we are not cheap. We are not cheap for a reason, because we actually get results and we work with people to get an outcome. So, but it's easier. It's more comfortable. So in the meantime, this is what he was thinking he would do. And I started questioning him. And like, it's his life at the end of the day, and it's up to him what he wants. But if what he wants is to get into the industry quickly with our support, and we've done it hundreds of times and we got lots of evidence and proof of that. Yes, it's more of an investment, but like, what do you want? Do you want to just go on a 2 or 3 day in-person training where you learn some stuff, or do you actually want the result, and do you want someone working with you and supporting you until you get the result? Or if we don't get the result in that time frame, then you can just have your money back and have all the training for free. But it was the easier option. The easier decision to make was to say no to what we have, and no to himself ultimately, and go with this other thing. Whether he would have done or not, I don't know. Anyway, I stayed with him because I was confident that what we had is the best thing for him. And when I'm that confident, I'm going to stay with someone, and I'm going to help them through the decision-making process, because his decision-making process was based on his perspective as a software engineer that's got no experience of this industry that I'm in, of controls, BMS, automation, and no perspective of working with hundreds of other people and knowing what the process is and knowing what hiring managers, business owners are actually looking for. Like, he hasn't got that perspective, and we make decisions based on our perspective. So that kind of way of thinking I shared with him, and it was like, well, this is what it comes down to. Do you trust my perspective and trust that I actually have your best intentions at heart, that this is the right thing for you? And I know it's difficult, and I know it's hard, and I know you want to make the right decision for you, and I know there's lots of fears that are cropping up right now, which we're going to get into. But like, do you trust that I have a different perspective than yours, and it's not right or wrong, it's just different? And do you trust that perspective to make a better decision for you at where we're at the moment? And we worked stuff out, and he joined, which is great. But this is what sparked this video ultimately. So I want to get into the fears that ultimately hold people back. And especially, I think, in a technical industry like ours, where it's very masculine and people don't want to show weakness or vulnerability, like, people don't really get a true sense of what's going on in people's lives and how they actually feel. Whereas I see it from a different perspective, because I actually work with electricians, engineers, technicians, and help them through a lot of these fears, help them get out of their comfort zone, and support them, and they open up to me. And so I know what it's really like, and I know what it's been like for me as well, and I'm happy to sort of talk openly about it, because I think it's helpful, to be honest and talk about the realities rather than pretending that we don't have any fears and all of that. So the first one is fear of being scammed. And this is obviously in the situation that the client I was just discussing was in. And this is not something really that he can get over. This is really our responsibility to build that trust. So that's why, if you go to our website, like, have done as much as I humanly possible. I've done as much as I humanly can to provide as much social proof, to develop as much trust as possible, that if you do make this decision, that it will work out, you know, because we've got all this evidence of all the other people that we've worked with. And, you know, you're not a special snowflake. You're no different to anyone else. If you go through the program, you put in the work and you work with us, you will get the same result as these guys. Now, the second one is fear of loss, which is like one of the biggest things that stops us as humans making progress or doing things, is the fear of loss. The fear of loss is far more than the opposite, which is the happiness of gaining something. That fear of loss like far outweighs the happiness of gaining something. So say if we lost $100 or £100, that's far more of a feeling than if we found $100 or £100. See what I'm saying? So the fear of loss is real. Most people are loss aversion. So again, this is kind of our responsibility. This is why we add a risk reversal. So if we don't help you in X time frame and you've actually been through the program, then we will give you your money back. You know, and that is written into our agreement. It's legally binding, and that's something that we uphold. Now, this next one, fear of failure. So like they don't fully trust themselves that if they take this step, that it's going to work out. And they might fail. So, but how I like to think about this, because this is now the person, like there's not really much that we can do to help in terms of like actual practical things that we can do. Like we've done all the social proof, we've provided the risk reversal guarantee. Now we're really getting into the individual. So they are. And this is all completely normal, by the way, and this is exactly like the same fears that I have and, you know, everyone has. It's just how you handle them, the decisions you make despite these feelings and emotions and thoughts being there. So, fear of failure. The thing is, that's there. And how are you ever going to know if you fail or not if you don't actually take action? And a good thing to do here is to actually reflect on the past. So let's say that you were, I don't know, you were just starting off in your electrical career and going through all of these exams and tests and whatnot. You know, it's quite arduous going through that process. Well, I'm sure you had a fear back then that you might fail, that you might not make it, you might not have made it. But despite that, you continued working because I imagine it was important for you. And, you know, look where you are now. Looking back, you've actually been through that. So it's the same thing here. We're at a new place, and based on past experiences that you've succeeded, why would you fail moving forward if this is important? Now, this next one, fear of judgment. So social validation, fear of looking foolish. This is probably the biggest one in our industry. Just like, it's such like everyone's, what's the right word? Well, it's where like knowledge hoarders come in. Like people don't want to make out that they don't know what they're talking about. So they kind of like flex and peacock their technical ability, but it's only usually surface level. But it's like that they want that social validation, and they don't want that. They don't want to appear stupid, basically. But the reality is, and this is a reality for absolutely everyone, so we might as well be honest, if you are doing something new, if you are learning a new skill, if you are getting yourself out of your comfort zone because you haven't got the skill sets, you know, and you're new to it, you're you're not going to look stupid. You're only going to look stupid to the people that never do that. Because they don't actually know the realities of progression, development, growth, where you do have to go back to the start. And it's just the way it is. Like, you can't avoid it. But you don't, if you carry on progressing, you're only at that stage for a little bit. And then you learn something, and then you build on that, and you build on that, and you build on that. So the only people that think you're stupid are the people that just stay here and don't do anything. So that's kind of irrelevant. Don't worry about that, because who gives a shit about the judgment of those people that never do anything to develop themselves? Like, let them stay where they are, and if they're happy, great, but they're never going to accomplish anything in life, especially if they think that you're stupid for starting over, So fear of uncertainty. This is the next one. And it kind of ties into the last one. Like, there's a lot of uncertainty whether what they're about to do will work out, and they want a guarantee. But unfortunately, nothing is guaranteed in life. The only thing that's guaranteed are death and taxes, and then when you die, you pay more taxes, right? So that's the only thing that's guaranteed. But what you've got to think about is, does this action put me in a better position than what I was before, even if it doesn't work out? And we talk about doesn't work out, and fail. You only fail when you give up and you stop. So that's what you got to think about there. And it goes back to, like, if you don't take that leap of faith across that bridge to start climbing that mountain, even though that bridge looks rickety, scary, there's holes in it, there's a massive drop under this bridge, if you don't take that step, how will you ever know whether things do work out or not? So that's that, really. Oh, this is a good one. So, fear of responsibility. Like, this is massive, and this was probably one of the most liberating things that I ever experienced. Like, people naturally don't want to take responsibility, because if they take responsibility and it doesn't work out, then that little chatty thing in their head, that ego, gets really, really dented and upset. So it's far easier to externalize their locus of control, and put responsibility on other people and other events. And our mind, that second chatty thing in our heads, will come up with all the reasons to not take responsibility. I need to speak with my missus. I need to speak with my boss before I can do that. Or the weather was shit. Or it was late. Or I got up a little bit late. Or there's all these things that just give us a reason to get out of it and not take responsibility. But that way of thinking means that you are not in control, because as soon as you take this is the most liberating thing that I've ever discovered and realised. And this was when I went from, like, being like a very unhappy service engineer to thinking, fuck this, not any longer. I'm actually going to take control here. And that's when I ultimately took responsibility. Because when you take full responsibility and full accountability, no one else is in control. You are fully in control. So then it's up to you to put the things in place and take the actions to get you to where you want to get to. Now, this final one is really interesting, but it's a real fear, and that is the fear of success. Because it's like you know the person that you are at the moment, but you don't know the person and the life and what it's going to be like if you succeed. And that can actually be really scary for people, because what's the saying? Like, you'd rather live with the devil that you know than the devil that you don't. Which is crazy. This one I haven't I struggle to get my head around, but I do understand it. But like, you're not, if you want to change and you want to change, you want to change because you're not 100% happy with your current situation. I mean, we're never necessarily going to be 100% happy. That's a human condition. We're always going to want more unless we're enlightened. But like, you're below that threshold of happiness that's triggering you to actually want to make a change. So you want change. Let's just say, rather than, I think a better way to look at this is fear of success might be the wrong way to look at this. Fear of positive change. I think that's an easier way to frame this in our head, because success, that can mean so many things to so many different people, and we can get into our heads and make all these projections which will probably never come true, but again, it can kind of stop us. You know, that, what if we become famous? What, like, how will that affect family life and all of these things, which probably won't ever happen, but that can stop you making that change in the moment. So maybe a better way to look at that is like fear of a better self. But it's like, well, it's got to be better than where you are right now. So do you want to continue? Like, how much longer do you want to leave it in your current situation that you're clearly not happy with, that you're wanting to make a change about? Like, how long do you want to continue living that life? So yeah, that was kind of the video. If you are an engineer, electrician, technician, you want help with your business, with your career, getting into BMS, controls, automation, we can help you. There's a link in the description. I don't really care if you click it or not, but I hope this video was helpful. I'll see you later.